For decades, Marcus Walton quietly swept floors at Rivington Industries, enduring humiliation from a racist manager. But when Marcus secretly recorded the abuse, he revealed a shocking truth. He wasn't just a janitor, but a board member. What happened next shook the company to its core. But let's start from the beginning. Marcus Walton, a 62-year-old black janitor, had dedicated nearly 3 decades of his life to Rivington Industries. To him, the factory wasn't just a job. It was a cornerstone of his life, helping him raise his children after the tragic loss of his wife. Over the years, Marcus had built strong relationships with his colleagues, earning their respect for his diligence, humility, and wisdom. Despite the repetitive tasks and physical demands of his job, Marcus found pride in his work and a quiet satisfaction in contributing to the company's success. But everything changed when Harry Weinstein became the new manager. Harry brought with him a toxic attitude that infected the workplace like a virus. Unlike the previous managers who valued teamwork and mutual respect, Harry thrived on intimidation and control. He seemed to take particular pleasure in berating those who couldn't fight back, and Marcus quickly became one of his favorite targets. To Harry, Marcus wasn't a respected employee with decades of experience. He was simply the janitor. Harry belittled Marcus in front of others, criticized his work without cause, and made snide remarks about his age and appearance. The once positive atmosphere of Rivington Industries began to sour, with employees feeling the weight of Harry's domineering presence. One rainy afternoon, the tension reached a boiling point. A small coffee stain on the office floor caught Harry's eye as he stormed out of a meeting. His face twisted with irritation, and he zeroed in on Marcus, who was cleaning the nearby break room. "Marcus, get over here!" Harry barked, his voice echoing through the office. Marcus calmly turned toward him, holding a mop in one hand and a bucket in the other. "Yes, Mr. Weinstein?" Harry's face was flushed with anger as he gestured dramatically toward the stain. "What is this? Do you even do your job, or do you just walk around here pretending to work? This floor looks like a pigsty." Employees nearby froze in awkward silence, glancing at Marcus with sympathetic but helpless expressions. Marcus, however, remained composed. His face was a mask of calm, but his hands moved deliberately as he slid his phone into his pocket, its camera discreetly pointed at Harry. "Mr. Weinstein, I was just about to clean that up," Marcus replied, his tone measured. "That's not good enough," Harry snapped, stepping closer. His voice grew louder, almost a shout. "I've had it with your incompetence. If I see one more thing out of place, you're out of here. Do you understand me?" The tirade continued for several minutes, with Harry's words becoming increasingly hostile and personal. He mocked Marcus's age, calling him a relic, and questioning why the company even bothered to keep him around. "You're a waste of space," Harry sneered. "Rivington deserves better than this." Despite the venom in Harry's words, Marcus didn't flinch. He simply nodded and murmured, "Understood, sir." All the while, his phone quietly recorded the entire encounter. What Harry didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just a janitor. He was also a silent member of Rivington Industries' board of directors, a role he had taken on years ago after a series of promotions and achievements. Marcus had chosen to work incognito in his former position to gain an unfiltered view of how the company operated on the ground. This role allowed him to observe workplace dynamics, employee morale, and potential areas for improvement. As Harry stormed off, leaving Marcus standing by the stain, Marcus allowed himself a small sigh. His heart ached, not for himself, but for the employees who endured this environment daily. He had taken the verbal abuse for weeks, all while documenting Harry's behavior, knowing that he would need undeniable evidence to expose the toxicity the manager had brought into the company. Marcus finished cleaning the stain, his movements slow and deliberate. He was already planning his next steps. The footage he had just captured would serve as the catalyst for change, not only for himself, but for everyone at Rivington Industries. This wasn't just about justice for one man. It was about restoring the integrity of a workplace he had given his life to. Little did Harry know that the janitor he had just humiliated held the power to decide his fate. Harry's voice echoed through the office, growing louder and more venomous with every word. His insults had taken on an edge that was impossible to ignore, dripping with racial undertones that left the surrounding employees in stunned silence. Some exchanged uneasy glances, while others avoided eye contact entirely, afraid of drawing Harry's wrath. Marcus stood at the center of the storm, his expression calm, but his heart pounding as he absorbed the torrent of abuse. "You're a disgrace to this company," Harry spat, his face flushed with anger. "I don't know why they even keep someone like you around. You're slow, careless, and obviously don't have the sense to handle even the simplest tasks." His eyes scanned Marcus, and his lips curled into a sneer. "Maybe they keep you here to fill some diversity quota." The air seemed to freeze. A young engineer, Jason Carter, who had been working at his desk nearby, looked up in disbelief. His jaw tightened, and he set down his pen before stepping cautiously toward the confrontation. "Sir, I think you're being unfair," Jason said, his voice steady but edged with hesitation. "Marcus works harder than anyone here, and you're—" Harry turned sharply, his eyes narrowing as he cut Jason off mid-sentence. "Unfair?" he hissed, his tone dripping with contempt. "You don't get paid to comment on fairness. You get paid to build. So why don't you keep your opinions to yourself and do your job?" Jason hesitated, clearly torn between standing up for Marcus and the reality of his position. After a tense moment, he gave a small nod and returned to his desk, his face a mixture of frustration and defeat. Harry's glare followed him until he sat down, then shifted back to Marcus. "As for you," Harry continued, his voice rising again, "don't think for a second that you're untouchable. If it were up to me, you'd be out of here tomorrow. People like you are a liability, not an asset." Marcus stayed silent, his eyes focused on a spot just above Harry's shoulder. It wasn't the first time he'd endured such treatment, but this time was different. In his pocket, his phone was still recording, capturing every word. He knew that every insult, every racially charged remark, would soon be laid bare for the people who mattered most, the company's board of directors. When Harry finally stormed off, muttering something about incompetence, the room seemed to exhale collectively. Several employees glanced at Marcus with a mix of sympathy and respect, but no one dared say anything aloud. Marcus gave them a small nod of reassurance before returning to his cleaning cart. His movements were deliberate, masking the turmoil brewing inside him. That evening, Marcus sat at his modest kitchen table, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his fingers steady as he scrolled to the video file. As he pressed play, the room filled with the sound of Harry's tirade. Marcus watched intently, his face impassive, but his mind racing. The footage was damning. Harry's tone, words, and demeanor revealed the full extent of his prejudice and arrogance. It wasn't just an angry outburst. It was a calculated attempt to belittle and dehumanize. Marcus rewound the video to the moment where Jason had tried to step in. He felt a flicker of gratitude for the young engineer's bravery, even though he understood why Jason had backed down. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the faint glow of the phone illuminating his thoughtful expression. He had seen men like Harry before, people who used their positions of power to push others down, mistaking fear for respect. But Marcus also knew the power of truth. This video wasn't just a record of Harry's behavior. It was a weapon against the toxic culture that had begun to fester under his leadership. As he replayed the video one last time, Marcus's resolve hardened. Tomorrow, he would bring the evidence to the board. It wasn't just about holding Harry accountable. It was about restoring the dignity of everyone who had suffered under his rule. Marcus knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but he had spent his life overcoming obstacles. This was just one more battle, and he was ready to fight it, not for himself alone, but for everyone who believed in fairness and respect. The boardroom at Rivington Industries was a space of polished wood and glass, designed to reflect the company's professionalism and stature. This particular meeting, however, would take a turn that no one in the room anticipated. As the directors settled into their seats, their focus was on the agenda items printed neatly in their folders: quarterly earnings, market projections, operational updates. But Marcus Walton, standing at the head of the table, knew they were about to confront something far more pressing. Dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, Marcus was nearly unrecognizable to many in the room. The usual image of Marcus as a janitor was replaced by a confident, composed figure. For the first time, he addressed the board, not as a quiet observer, but as a peer. He cleared his throat, and the low hum of conversation subsided as the directors turned their attention to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice steady but serious, "I'd like to bring forward an issue that directly impacts the culture of our workplace." He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a flash drive. "What I'm about to show you is something I believe every person in this room needs to see." The murmurs stopped entirely as Marcus inserted the flash drive into the projector. The screen at the end of the room lit up, and with a click, the video began to play. The room was immediately filled with the sound of Harry Weinstein's voice, dripping with contempt and cruelty. The footage showed Harry berating Marcus with venomous insults, his words laced with racial undertones. "You're a disgrace," Harry's voice bellowed, echoing through the pristine space of the boardroom. "I don't know why this company even keeps you around." Gasps rippled through the room as the tirade continued, Harry's words growing more demeaning with every second. Some directors exchanged shocked glances. Others stared at the screen in disbelief. A few visibly flinched when Harry mocked Marcus's age and reduced his role to being nothing more than a diversity hire. By the time the video ended, the room was utterly silent. The weight of what they had witnessed hung heavy in the air. Marcus turned to face the board, his expression calm but resolute. "This," he said, his voice ringing clearly, "is how one of our managers treats our employees. Is this the kind of leadership we want to represent our company? Is this what we want Rivington Industries to stand for?" His words sliced through the silence, prompting an immediate reaction from the board. One director, a woman known for her unwavering focus on corporate ethics, broke the silence. "This is appalling," she said, her tone sharp. "No employee, regardless of their position, should ever be subjected to this kind of treatment." Others began to chime in, their outrage palpable. "This is a disaster waiting to happen," one man muttered, shaking his head. "Not only is this morally reprehensible, but it's also a massive liability for the company." The chairman, an older man with a reputation for pragmatism, held up a hand to quiet the growing chorus of voices. He leaned forward, his brow furrowed, and addressed Marcus directly. "Mr. Walton, thank you for bringing this to our attention. This behavior," he said, his voice heavy with disapproval, "is unacceptable. It goes against everything Rivington Industries stands for. We will address it immediately." The chairman's words seemed to settle the room, though the undercurrent of tension remained. Marcus inclined his head in acknowledgement, but wasn't finished. "It's not just about Harry Weinstein," he said, his voice steady but firm. "His behavior reflects a deeper problem in our culture. Employees shouldn't fear their supervisors. They should feel valued and respected. If we don't address this, we risk losing not only morale, but also the integrity of this company." The chairman nodded solemnly. "You're right. This isn't just about one man, it's about the values of this company as a whole. We will conduct a full investigation and take corrective action, starting immediately." As the board began discussing the next steps, termination proceedings for Harry, company-wide leadership training, and revising workplace policies, Marcus finally took his seat. His heart was steady, knowing he had done what needed to be done. In that moment, he wasn't just a janitor or a board member. He was a catalyst for change, ensuring that Rivington Industries upheld the values it claimed to represent. Within days of the board meeting, Harry Weinstein was summoned to a private session with the directors of Rivington Industries. Seated in the sterile conference room, he attempted to maintain his usual air of authority, but the atmosphere was tense, and his confidence was visibly cracking. The room was filled with the weight of what had transpired, and the board members, typically cordial and measured, regarded Harry with stern, unyielding expressions. The chairman began the meeting, his tone cold and deliberate. "Mr. Weinstein, we have reviewed the evidence presented during our last meeting. Before we proceed, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Harry launched into a series of excuses, his voice growing defensive as he blamed the stress of his position and even attempted to question Marcus's motives. "The video doesn't show the full context," he argued. "I was under immense pressure, and maybe I was harsh, but I was trying to enforce standards." But his justifications faltered under the weight of the video evidence, which was impossible to refute. The room remained unmoved, the board's silence speaking volumes. One director finally interjected, her voice cutting through Harry's rambling defense. "Your behavior was not only unprofessional, but entirely unacceptable. It's not stress, it's abuse, and it has no place here." After a brief but decisive discussion, the board voted unanimously to terminate Harry's employment. As the chairman delivered the verdict, he did so without hesitation. "Your actions have violated the values of Rivington Industries. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated." Harry's face drained of color as the reality of the situation set in. The company swiftly issued a public statement, reinforcing its commitment to fostering a respectful and inclusive workplace. The statement acknowledged the incident and outlined steps to ensure such behavior would not be tolerated in the future, including company-wide training and a zero-tolerance policy for harassment. Meanwhile, Marcus was formally recognized for his courage and integrity. The board issued him a personal apology and offered him a leadership role focused on improving workplace culture and employee morale. Though humbled by the offer, Marcus accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to bring meaningful change to the company he had served for decades. The story spread quickly across social media. The video, combined with the company's decisive actions, resonated deeply with the public. Conversations about workplace respect and equity gained momentum, with Rivington Industries praised for addressing the issue head-on. Back at the factory, employees felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The oppressive atmosphere Harry had cultivated was dissipating, replaced by hope and optimism. For the first time in years, they felt heard and valued. Through it all, Marcus remained modest, quietly continuing his work while embracing his new responsibilities. His actions became a powerful reminder that change can come from unexpected places, and even those often overlooked can drive monumental shifts in culture and justice.